Okay. Geheerd me herfolkje. Welcome everyone to another live Mind the Craic. Today I'm continuing on with this special triangle as discovered by L. Ron Hubbard, and the special triangle is not necessarily a physical triangle, but a representation of a triangle by which three factors, three things, have a special relationship. And those three things are affinity, reality, and communication. And in the last number of videos that I have done, we talked about affinity, and then we spoke about reality. And today, I'm going to tie some things together, but just begin talking about communication. I definitely have a lot more to say on the subject because it is very basic and very fundamental. And as L. Ron Hubbard said, the ARC triangle is the keystone of living associations. This triangle is the common denominator to all of life's activities. So with a concept, with an idea given such, enormous words, granting it such a, all-encompassing type of view of all of life's activities being the common denominator, it is therefore worthy of a lot of inspection. So, where do we go from here? Well, let me introduce a little bit more by saying or asking, have you ever had a situation where you've had to try and communicate with a foreign person? Now, it could have been someone that speaks a completely different language to your own, from English to, let's say, French. And if you've ever been to France and tried to speak with a French person, you might have found that perhaps they weren't as willing to accept a communication from you if you didn't speak in the French proper way that you did. I myself had no problems when I went to France, trying to speak, but maybe that is an example. I definitely have heard that from a number of people. Trying to communicate with a foreign person that doesn't speak the same language can be difficult. But not only speaking a completely different language, what about a situation where someone else apparently speaks English and you also speak English, but they speak with a completely different accent, or they use words that mean different things than what you're accustomed to it meaning in your own language. So these are examples of not being able to communicate or having a break in communication, there being no communication existing between yourself and another. And you may have experienced various levels of persistence on your behalf or on the behalf of the other person that you're trying to communicate with, or whoever it was. So we're going to delve into communication a little bit and explore those ideas that relate to communicating with someone that you don't understand, and also just the basic subject of communication itself. Okay, so where do we move on from here? Well, seeing that there is this interplay of the three components: affinity, reality, and communication. And the core, let's say, concept of the relationship between these things, you could put it in this way. Any one side of the triangle does improve or disimprove based on what's happening with the other corners of the triangle. Said another way, if you reduce one factor, you will also reduce the other two factors. If you improve two factors, you will improve undoubtedly the third. Even if you improve one factor, you will also improve the others. So they work in concert. They all will improve together. They will all disimprove together. And on that basis, you have a three-option entry into improving relations with another person. And as L. Ron Hubbard said there, the triangle is the keystone of living association. So a keystone is a very important part, or a piece that makes everything fit. It makes it all work. So having these three options with which to enter and improve living associations, we looked at affinity, reality, communication. So communication, before I get into the details of it, which I'm not going to touch on today, on what exactly communication is, we're just going to go with the basics of it. Communication is, in essence, the sending and receiving of something. Now, if you look at that in terms of 2 points, we're going to go really basic and really fundamental. We've got a point A and a point B. So point A would send something out, and point B would receive something. Now, that something could be anything. And that is the essence of a communication. A the sending, and B, the receiving of something. And that would be just a single one-way, we're going to call that a one-way communication. There is, of course, two-way communication, whereupon A is sending out something that is received by B, and B is in return sending out something that then is received by A. See how that went two ways. So we've got one-way communication and two-way communication. Hopefully you're getting all my hand maneuvers here. Okay, so I'm going to take a quote from this book, and again, this book here is Scientology, the Fundamentals of Thought, covering the basic principles of Dianetics and Scientology, of course, by L. Ron Hubbard, and this quote is in relation to communication. Here it is. In understanding the composition of human relations in this universe, communication is more important than the other two corners of the triangle. Communication is the solvent for all things. It dissolves all things. Okay, so let's take a look at that for a second. We did look at the triangle being affinity, reality, communication, and he just said there that communication is more important than the other two. So more important than affinity and more important than reality. And we'll look at why that is in just a moment. Okay, but on to the next thing. The next sentence there was, communication is the solvent for all things, and in brackets, it dissolves all things. So if we could look at something that is going to solve or dissolve or make something go away, we would look at something as being, let's say we have the presence of something, that the way that that thing would not become that thing would be through communication. And that's where the definition of communication really has to be broadened to get the full scope of that. And in order to, again, and what that first quote I gave you, this triangle is the common denominator to all of life's activities. So when we have a look at communication and really broaden it out to not, when we're looking at this, the thing that's sent out and the thing that is received, that in essence is a communication, we can really look at this solving of all things, the dissolving of all things, as involving communication, and it applies not only to the physical universe, but also in, regular spoken, written communication and that sort of thing. Okay, so hopefully you're not lost with what I just said. Let me backtrack and go over that again. So let's say you have a problem, and we could start with something very simple. You have a problem between yourself and another person. There's some misunderstanding. How are you going to solve that? Well, you're going to communicate. This is the situation that I felt that we ran into. And that person then will exchange, well, this is the situation I found that I ran into. And you might find in that a common thing you both understand, you both have as real, and here we're going to start to involve the other corners of the triangle. We have something that's real that was wrong. Oh, the reason that we got it wrong is because you thought it was Saturday and I thought it was Sunday. There we go. Now we have understanding, we have a common understanding that's now shared, and we can then move on. So you could say that dissolve that problem. Now it's obviously very basic and rudimental, kind of simple example, but we could even go as far as looking at the physical universe. And I'm stretching it here, but follow me, okay? So if we look at even just the rocks at the beach, or you could even say mountains and things like that, that in order for something to be worn away, for it to be dissolved, for it to be changed in its form, in a way dissolved, there has to be some communication. And if we're just looking at it from that form of, let's say the shells on the beach or the rocks at the beach and that sort of thing, how are they dissolving? How are they changing their form? It is through communication. It is the exchange of one thing being sent out and then received by another. And then through these principles of friction, through the principles of friction, changing or wearing away and perhaps dissolving this thing that is receiving that message, that thing that was sent out. Okay, so I really wanted to stretch it to both ends of the spectrum there, from something as simple as conversation, which people will automatically assume and relate to communication, to something that's way off over the other side, but in essence still is communication, because we spoke about, in essence, it being something that is sent and something that is received. And we could look at that also as in forces. Forces are sent and received in that same sort of way. Okay, so if you need to get a bit deeper and think about that, go ahead. So now, it was said in the quote here that communication is more important than the other two triangles, corners of the triangle. So more important than affinity and reality. And so I'm going to give you this last quote just to finish with this short note today. And again, it's a quote from this book, Scientology, The Fundamentals of Thought. And L. Ron Hubbard said, "It might be said that the triangle begins with communication, which brings into existence affinity and reality." Okay, so let's have a think about that in terms of communication. So we have an entity in existence, perhaps it's a person, perhaps it's something else. And it is emanating, sending out something. Something is sent, and then something is received. Now that communication in one direction, perhaps then being sent some sort of information back, or some sort of information being received, would give you a reality about that thing. Now, whether that be you're directing your vision and you're looking at something and you're receiving the light waves, which gives you a reality of it. Maybe it is you're asking someone a question about something and then they give you a response that establishes your reality. Maybe you're talking to that person and they're, quite garbled in a foreign language, and therefore the information that you're getting back has no reality with you, and so therefore the communication is very, very low. So you start to see how these things are related. And we also spoke about affinity being something related to emotion and survival and that sort of thing. And through communication, you could establish a level of affinity based on how much is that thing going to help me to survive? Because once having communicated with it, perhaps perceived it, exchanged, if it's a person, exchanging ideas with that person, or hearing from it just on a one-way communication type of thing, you'll see that communication then starts to bring into existence, what is my reality with that thing? How do I feel about it? What is my tolerance of distance? Do I like it? Do I want it to be close to me? Do I want it to be further away from me? Okay, so have a think about that. I'll read the quote one more time. "It might be said that the triangle begins with communication, which brings into existence affinity and reality." Okay, I'm going to look at communication a little bit more in the next video. So hopefully that's some food for you to think of. See how that applies to your life. See if there's any way you can use that. If you can understand the relations that you're having with other people around you, and use communication perhaps to see how you can improve reality and affinity with others and improve relations. That's all I have time for. Shanae for today.